mind trainings, compassions, those so many values comes from our traditional text.
Monks and scientists discussing on such a topic, so it's very insightful because this is something that
The minor life is a very international kind of like a institution. Biggest issue we are now talking about the mental health.
Right. Because when you said Geshe, like this analytical meditation, this really hit me. And on top of this, when you discussed about dream yoga,
I'm part of the Tibet research group, so I'm part of that. So we published called
What is the daily routine of a normal Tibetan monk?
Unsilenced, Voices of Young Tibetans is a podcast presented by the Foundation for Nonviolent Alternatives, where young Tibetans share their personal stories, experiences, opinions, and journey in exile.
Geshe Dile, Namaste, and welcome to FNVA's podcast, Unsilenced, Voices of Young Tibetans. Today we are blessed and honored to have with us a Tibetan Geshe from the prestigious Sera Jey Monastery. He has made major inroads in the field of Buddhism and science. He has written, taught, and presented, and even published a plethora of works on this subject. He recently displayed dialectics on scientific concepts in front of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama in the Tibetan settlement of Monkot. He is also the first Tibetan monk to be the Tenzin Gyatso Science Scholar at Emory University. So, welcome to the show, Geshe Thabkhe Lodroe.
Thank you, Geshe, and a great honor to be here.
So thank you so much, Geshe, for joining us here. Like, we really wanted you to be with us for such a long time, and we are really honored and pleased to have you with us here today. So Geshe, like, I'm a lay person, you're a monk. Many people in my generation and people around the world are curious, like, what is the daily routine of a normal Tibetan monk?
Okay. Geshe, I'm happy to be here to talk a little bit about that. Although my English is not that good, but I'll try my best. Many people see Tibetan monks in monasteries, but the Tibetan monastery, what is the monk life? That's a really good question. And one of the things is like major monastery, like my monasteries, it's a very, not only to the temples, it's a more academic monasteries. So you have to do lots of the academic learning, mainly Buddhist philosophy. So in order to do that, for example, right now I'm Geshe sort of graduate. So I'm now almost like kind of like holding to the teacher's role. So otherwise, if I not graduate and the student roles, you have to get up early in the morning, like 5 o'clock, and then there may be puja, sometime 5 to around 6:30, 7, and otherwise you just take to get up early morning and to memorize classical Buddhist texts, and after that you'll get breakfast, and after that maybe around 7:30 and 8, you will go to receive some teachings. We call the PT, so traditional like Buddhist scriptures teaching. And then after that, sometimes we have a debate class, a morning debate session, 9 to 11. So you have to go debate, and after that, lunch. In the monastery, we usually lunch quite early, around 11. And then after that, the between there in southern is very hot. So lots of monks taking nap because they get up early in the morning, and also they stay quite late in the evening. So during the daytime also very hot. So sometimes they take short nap, and sometimes they learn to the other than monastery academic study, like science and English and those and also other Tibetan karmas, something like that. And then around 2, then you will get another teaching, 2 to 4. That's depend on your class. And then 5 o'clock you will get lunch, dinner, and the 6 to sometimes 9 times, so you'll get evening debate. So it's a full of schedule. Especially on the summer, the main academic time, full of schedule. So
Indeed, Geshe, like when we think a life of a monk, we never think of such a rigorous schedules, but yourself sharing such valuable insights sort of tells us like how the current modern day monk lives, like undergoing such rigorous schedule. And on top of this, Geshe, like recently the 39th Mind and Life conference was held, and growing up in TCV Seloki, we had a principal. I think he's teaching at Sera Jey Monastery right now.
Right.
He would show us the conference, and there was a big curiosity. And I think in this year's conference and many conferences of the past, you have taken part in it. So, what is the Mind and Life conference exactly, and what were the valuable insights that you were able to gain in this year's conference?
The Mind and Life is a very international kind of like a institution. Originally found His Holiness and one of the neuroscientists, cognitive neuroscientists, and the original Chilean, the Francisco Varela, and one of the American businessmen, Adam Eagle. They came together to set up which mainly about bring to the lots of the scientists and the philosophers and contemplative practitioners together. Even though the people called Mind and Life conference, but really it's a dialogue to sharing to knowledge each other's one of the very wonderful. So and many famous scientists and the practitioners took part that last more than 30 years or 40. And since 1987, now it's nearly it's nearly 30, right?
Yep.
But 30 years ago. Sometimes I had to
such a long while.
Yes. And this year is they hold to the 39th annual conference. And the topic is very interesting because of the artificial intelligence and the ethics. So basically, it's a very important topic in the these days we are talking lots of age of AI or artificial intelligence. Theme is that so in the what mainly talking about discussing about the machine intelligence, human intelligence. What is the advantages? What is the risk? To sort of that, and also one of the main concern is ethical issue. AI is much more abundant now. The ethical issue not only about the private things or security or safety, but also lots of the professionals thinking about how can we put lots of the moral, like compassion, moral value, like compassion and mindfulness, and whatever necessary to or emotion regulations. How can we put that into or incorporate into AI in the future? So because there should be future, there's some sort of make sure to the AI rapidly growing we want to make sure to the human value also try to cooperate with that. That's one of the main. I learned so much.
Indeed, Geshe, one would never expect monks and scientists discussing on such a topic. So it's very insightful because this is something that people in the government are also discussing, because as you rightly said, AI is now eventually going to be part and parcel of our daily life. That is what the current trajectory says.
Yeah.
And what the conference discussed and what you said, Geshe, of how incorporating compassion, mindfulness, I think it's very much needed, even ethics.
Yes.
So, Geshe, you talked about here about how Tibetan Buddhist monks engage with scientists, and do you feel that there's a need to study modern science? And Mind and Life Conference is itself and vision of His Holiness for monks to sort of understand what's happening around the world, especially in the field of science. So, what is your take on that?
I think it's one of His Holiness. The really encouraging, even I think overall Tibetan generation should study science in the modern educations, because it's very important to in our society or in I mean, the education is, everyone knows is such an important, and especially science educations, even in the monasteries, because in the Buddhist we have a lot of richness about the human mind, mental factors, those things. And the other side of the science is one of the the main modern subject, and everyone is kind of like rely on that. So we definitely should know about that to in order to complement each other, or in order to introduce Buddhist value, or present to the young generation or modern society. Or you also need to dialogue with modern expertise. In order to do that, you need to know about, even not very details, but you have to know what's the topic, what is the issue that's going on.
Indeed, Gisela. And in your introduction, we mentioned how you are currently with the Sera Jey Monastery. So, Gisela, what are the challenges and opportunities that you face? Well, firstly, because right now you're teaching there, but firstly, when you were studying there, and what is your current role there? I mean, you teach there, but what exactly do you teach there, Gisela?
Currently, I kind of like a teacher position, teaching traditional Buddhist philosophy, and also I do teach basic science, like philosophy of science and basic physics. It's a wonderful opportunity to young generation in the monastery. When I was young and the monastery, you don't have that many to the options that you can learn to modern educations. But the other thing is, if there's too much, if you too many subjects, and then it's very hard to make time, because we know the young generation, we all kind of like to digital time, and we also spend lots of time with cell phones or those things. So it's basically time, and also you have one of the monks, or it's our main study is Buddhist philosophy and the traditional study. You want to make sure to not obstruct to them. So if you don't study to the Buddhist philosophy or traditional study, then it's not much the value. So that's, I think, it's a make sure to that's the not diluted, or there's not obstacles. So basically it's there's a lot of opportunities you can learn, but you also make sure which is priority and your study, or which is need much more focus on your own. So that's all we also want to make sure to that.
Indeed, Geshe. This is very powerful of you saying how in the monastery, you not only learn different subjects, but you keep your core values alive, which is learning Buddhism and its philosophy.
Exactly.
So, Geshe, could you share with us of how you firstly became interested in science and your experience in being the first Tibetan monk to become the Tenzin Gyatso Scholar at the Amaro University?
Yeah, actually, this is kind of like my life journey with science. I started learning science, I think 2004 or something. And initially, they have an organization called to the Science with Dharma, which is mainly by a Swiss government, based on His Holiness request to the Repco Monastery based on Switzerland. So they try to provide to the basic science education starting to the monastery. So I just took that part, fortunately. And then after that, I joined to the other organization. There's actually 3 organizations provide to the science education to the monasteries. One of them is, and also Science for Monk, which is one of the American Jews to support to the to bring the Western scientists to bring monastery to giving workshops, and I'll also participate that. Eventually, I get the program that's extensively done by Emory University and called the Emory Tibet Science Initiative. And they start from, I think, 2008. They called the pilot program, 2008 to 13, which two group of monks to invite to the Dharamsala to giving 5 years course. And that somehow, I don't know, they picked me up. And although at that time my English is very poor, but I still fortunately get opportunity to, because the idea is His Holiness is, the mention to them to provide science education to the monasteries. And the professor came to the monasteries. So, but then they realized they need to be more like sustained or like, in that educations. The Westerner may come once or twice, but not always. So now they realize, okay, we pick up some monks to bring to the West, give them more profound, more better educations, deeper educations, and then let them to teach, because that's easy. You don't need to translators.
Indeed.
And also, you can save a lot of time.
And Buddhist concepts are more strong with monks.
Yeah. And also, so that's why they give us the opportunity to little deeper level science, bring all the way to Emory, and then the idea is come back to the monastery to teach basic science, which actually we did.
Indeed, Geshe, that is very wonderful of how the whole subject of science came into the Tibetan monastic community of how, Geshe, you rightly mentioned there were these 3 programs initially where monks would be given workshop with scientists coming from abroad, and eventually the understanding sort of became of how monks needed to be sent to these very universities so that they could further train the very people studying in such monasteries.
Right.
So I think this is a very right decision, in my opinion. Some might not agree, Geshe, but in my opinion, I find this like a very suitable choice, and yourself carrying forth this very legacy and ensuring that the vision of His Holiness. So that the Tibetan monks and the larger Tibetan community, in my understanding, understands the importance of science and Buddhism is very strong here, Geshe.
Right.
So, Geshe, on top of this, like previously you mentioned, you attained Geshe, which in modern education term would be like a PhD doctorate.
Yes.
So, Geshe, what is a Geshe Lharampa? I mean, I gave a bit of insight here,
right?
But what is it exactly? How does one attain it, and how do you see yourself as a Geshe currently?
Yeah, Geshe Lharampa is a kind of like title name of the especially academic monasteries. Basically you should study about the Buddhist philosophy more than 20 years. So you have to start with how to do debate logic, to the rules of logics, how to apply to that, and then the 5 major subjects we have to cover, like Brahmana, Vartika Karika, or epistemology, and then Tanya Paramita we call the Persian, or like perfection, wisdom, or something. So then Madhyamaka. And then Vinaya rules, and then Abhidharma. So those 5 major texts you have learned. There's a kind of length. Some of them is 4 years, some of them 6 years, and some of them 3 years is subject. So once you done to the monasteries, and then they have own monasteries, then they have all the major monasteries come together to exam 6 years. Once you pass that 6 years exams, and then you become Geshe Lharampa. So it's a very long study. But obviously they have a lot of... Now you can see that because of we Tibetan preserve such a, the Nalanda traditions, the texts and knowledges. So they have plenty of text, even though 20 years studies, but you still feel like not finished. I'm just starting or something like that. So I feel like that too, even though I'm studying more than now, I think I start to early age. So now nearly 30 years ago, but still I'm feeling, I should study more, I should read more, something like that, because, depth of knowledge. Yeah, that's the sort of Geshe Lharampa and what are my experiences, something like that.
Indeed, Geshe La, like one never really sort of understands the larger and the hard work that goes into attaining a Geshe Lharampa degree for that matter. And you sharing us light about is sort of further emphasize how prominent and how valuable this course is, because at the end of the day, one not only attains a core and clearer understanding of these Buddhist philosophy concepts, but Geshe La yourself saying how you still have much to learn. I think that shows the essence of what exactly it means to be a Geshe Lharampa, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said this, Geshe La, like this really struck me of how Tibetan Buddhism, the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism, like you mentioned these concepts of Madhyamika, like I'm not aware of it, honestly, that much, Geshe La. But when you said how we Tibetans have been able to preserve this, I think this is one of the vision and I think the principal commitments of His Holiness, like
yes,
preserving
absolutely.
ancient Indian wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely true. The thing is that we should proud of that. Mm-hmm. We preserve such kind of, traditions like, we call the Ganjur, and then Buddha himself's, text is more than, 100 volumes and over the centuries. And then we call the Tenjur, which is commentaries, many, many volumes. So that only exists in Tibetan. So we preserve to the past generation did so much. Now we need to, not only that's the kind of like people call the living tradition, which is not only to the text that put in the shelf and then the offering.
Yes,
we are now reading, studying, and developing, and that because, and then somebody says, "What's that for?" As one of His Holiness is one of the relevant is the lots of about what I talk about, the human mind, how it works, and the human, the mental qualities, which is in very much relevant in the modern time. One of thing is in science now one of the biggest issue we are now talking about the mental health. So much so there's a kind of like the depressions, anxieties, and stress. And so many kind of different, mental disease or like dysfunction. And now that if you look at the Western tradition, they call the psychotherapy, clinical kind of like those things. So look at now how people are interested to the mindfulness meditations because they need it. So the mindfulness meditations and mind trainings and compassions, those so many values comes from the traditional text. And not only text, we are learning philosophically, and also we are practicing to those values, which is very, very much needed in the modern time.
Truly, Geshe La, especially emphasizing on the role of the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism and its significance in the modern day world, how we should not keep the things in the altar or the shelf, but like it's being practiced in person. So that is very powerful, Geshe La. Right. And Geshe La, like moving on, since we have talked about science, Buddhism, like what do you see its role in the future, especially since it has been His Holiness who has been pioneering this very vision? Like, what do you see the future of Tibetan Buddhism and science further collaborating? Because I believe Mind and Life conference is here to stay. There'll be 39 happen, 40, there might be 50, 60 conferences happening. So what is your view on that?
One of the His Holiness is full commitment, and the one of the fundamental is the first commitment, the promotion of the human values, which is really contribute for the world peace. So in terms of as I mentioned, in the Buddhism, they have a kind of like a potential to benefit for the human beings. For example, mindfulness is one of the great examples that comes from Buddhist traditions, but then did lots of research on this scientifically, and they show beneficial for the like emotion level, cognitive level, many levels. So they published a lot of research. So that's where the people taking it. So the one of the goal of His Holiness why encouraging to the study modern science, because the two ways. One way is, of course, we need to learn to the science perspectives. Other thing is, in the lot of the Buddhist psychology or values, and we do have to research through pure scientific method. Mm-hmm. So if we kind of like showing to the scientifically. We're not talking about to those, obviously we, as a monk, as a Buddhist, when you're practicing to the, compassion and the mind trainings, obviously it's a kind of like good for next life or good for to the enlightenment. But not everyone is kind of like taking for that. So it's a kind of like a pretty much daily based reason for your health, for your, calm down, your peaceful mind. So in that sense, we try to do more research to the scientifically, and then if you find benefit through the scientific investigations, and and then we'll reach those many more peoples. So that's ultimately to the beneficial to the not only to the Buddhist community, but many other, sentient beings. That's His Holiness is, always trying to the good for, not only one or two communities, but the all, beings.
Indeed, Geshe, emphasizing on His Holiness's first commitment here of universal peace. And when you mentioned this, Geshe, I sort of had this flashback moment of growing up in a Tibetan school. Like, we would always say this, there's this Tibetan phrase or quote, Geshe, Geshe Thabkhe, like you have to verify whether it's gold, then only you can Geshe. So on that note, I think one can truly find how Tibetan tradition of Buddhism and science always, like since Lord Buddha's time, there was a connection there.
So one of the reasons, as I mentioned, in the science is basically to searching truth, mm-hmm. and especially cognitive and neuroscience also try to understand the human mind and the human behavior. And Buddhism also trying to, not only to the accept to the, Buddhist word, mm-hmm. As you mentioned, example of the goldsmith. So, and the Buddha himself talked about to the, how to, for my followers, don't accept because of the reason mm-hmm. I'm telling, but you analyze this. If you find the reason, then you can believe that sort of, Buddha himself told as you're quoting. So, so that's the, that's kind of like same, principle to searching to truth and benefit, and also through investigations. But the difference is the science is more like third persons mm-hmm. To the perspective. Like, Buddhism also kind of like, doing analyzing, but more like first persons.
Like self-introspection,
reflection. And also experience.
Indeed.
To sometimes there's a kind of like a, different ways you have to understand, not totally, but the basic principle there's the same, sure. So those is a really good things, because as your learners, you need to learn to that there's a convergence mm-hmm. and also divergence. And those things is It's really important. To me, personal, really interesting because there's, this is same thing, that sort of things. But this is, very different. Why this is reference, which is so many levels, kind of like making to me is more interesting.
Indeed, Geshe. Thank you for sharing that light, because like we sort of generally think in those terms, but explaining to us the nuances here. Okay, there are certainly some level of convergence, but there are also levels of divergence when it comes to Tibetan tradition of Buddhism and science. So that's very powerful, Geshe.
Yeah.
And taking note of what you said previously, Geshe, you said people write on this, people discuss on this. So Geshe, you yourself has written much on it, on the field of Tibetan tradition of Buddhism and science. So could you share some of your writings, some of your peer-reviewed publications for that matter?
I mean, we had started to kind of like that. Science is eventually not the kind of like a listening lecture or not learning. Science is doing, right?
Yes.
You have to do research. So it's not easy to reach there because we are not professional scientists. So we are learning and then now doing kind of research. For example, one of the researches, what is the debate to affect to your emotion regulations, or what is happening to your brain? So I'm part of the we are called the debate research group. So I'm part of that. So we publish called the interbrain synchronization. Kind of like if you see the debate, monks debate sometimes group, sometimes individual, one by one. So if you are truly, engaged to doing the debate, and we just try to record it through EEG, what is the brain synchronization happening? Because we call sometimes if you're truly engaged in debate, that's all called analytical meditation. Meditation, in a sense, you need to be lots of attention. Focus, that's the subject you are discussing. So if you are truly both challengers and defenders, the same focus, and then how much, focus there. So you need to EEG record. So that's a sort of, we 1 or 2 paper publish it, and we're hopefully more doing. And also we have started to kind of like participating. Some of my colleagues doing like Tukdam research, you have heard, and they published some papers, and we are also starting doing like dream yoga, because in the lots of literatures in the Western, there's doing this, there's called the lucid dream, which is during the dream, you recognize dream is dream, and they study a lot of that. And one of the Tibetan Buddhist practice called the dream yoga, which is a tantric tradition. The practitioners try to understand, recognize the dream stream. Once you recognize the dream, you try to manipulate to the practice whatever you kind of like imagination, your deities or your gurus or some other. So which is really, it's powerful, because even though you are sleeping, and you still practice. So that's a kind of like idea. But we are now trying to start to those to research. I don't know how much, how far we can go, but we are trying to. So kind of very excited to. That's a new kind of things we are doing in the future.
Indeed, Geshe, I think some of the things that you have mentioned have gone beyond my understanding, honestly. But the research that you and your team, and especially the larger Tibetan community and the scientists are doing, are very interesting, in my opinion. Especially the first one where you mentioned how ECGs and the level of mind engagement is happening when Tibetan monks are doing dialectics.
Yes.
It's very interesting. Because when you said, Geshe, like this analytical meditation, this really hit me. And on top of this, when you discussed about dream yoga,
Right.
I mean, we always wonder, like sometimes when you're a dream, you think it's reality, but you wake up and you sort of understand that, I don't know, Geshe, some say that this is reality, but maybe you can shed much more light, or this would be another discussion in itself. But the research that you have shared, I think these are the things that would sort of advance the larger global human community, humanity as a whole.
Right.
So I think it's very powerful in my opinion. And Gisela, these days we've also seen, we've talked about it a bit. I mean, you've shed much light about how in this current day and age, there is mental health is a constant subject that people are discussing. Mindfulness is being taken into consideration. And we've come across how Tibetan monks and Rinpoches who have learned this very subject through the Buddhist philosophy go to these big and huge MNCs like Google to give such talks. So, Rinpoche, what is your understanding of this? How do Tibetan monks not only engage with scientists at the personal level, but on the larger community, engaging with such MNCs?
What is the potential we have to our traditions? So the people see it. So that's why they wanted to learn to really. And then the lots of things is really beneficial to the daily lives. So they are really practicing now. So one of the things is I sometimes the friend and the other people's to okay, we should see our core value, especially like mind training and some of that. So simple meditation, those things we should do some sort of more focus on that because that's one of our cultures. But yeah, obviously we Tibetans and strongly Buddhists. But we are much more focused on the rituals, reciting mantras and those things. I'm not saying those it's not good, but it's good. Those are also very important. But we also should do some sort of nowadays the Westerners do some short meditation and kind of like this. I think we should also have to do how to meditate and those things. I think we have to pay more attention because they have a real beneficial. Not only I'm talking about the next life or nirvanas. It's a daily base. So that's their interest to invite to the monks or Rinpoches to give the talks because they see the potentials.
Indeed, Geshe, and when you said this, I remember in school, there was this concept introduced to us, I was like, is this really true? They call this walking meditation.
Yeah.
I think it was that very principle, our very principle, Gate Douglas introduced after attending, I believe, a Mind and Life conference. So it is very powerful. Sometimes taking time of your daily routine, sort of relaxing your mind, sort of reflecting and introspecting what exactly happened. So like you certainly said, I think there is a lot of potential here. And maybe that's why, like you said, these very MNCs are inviting Tibetan Buddhist Lamas and Rinpoches to present deliver such lectures at their companies for that matter.
Yeah, surely, especially in the term of digital, times. We always using the social media, all these things. So we have to, sometimes taking back to thinking about, reflections and slow down, we have to try to give some time to relax. That's, I think it's very important to do some sort of reflect ourselves to back and focus on the just simple breath and also Theravada traditions more commonly talk about walking meditations and even now almost like eating meditations because you try to bring attention to whatever you are doing, the present moment. Because sometimes we even having food, but
you're talking
somewhere and also watching and then so it's our attention's very distracted, so much distracted. So we need to bring our attention and the focus to ourselves, they call the present moment. So this is, I think, is quite important to get a little bit of relaxation to the mind. The early times, people working very hard physically,
Indeed, Geshe.
and they need really to the physical relaxation. Now we are mentally
Working.
working too much. So we really need to the little bit relaxation to the mentally to calm down a little bit. That's, I think, important. Yeah.
Truly, Geshe. So, Geshe, we've shared much of what you're doing, your thoughts on Tibetan tradition of Buddhism and science. So, Geshe, what are your plans moving forward, if you're comfortable to share, especially in terms of the teachings that you do at the Sera Jey Monastic School currently, and others also?
Yeah. I don't have a much plan, so basically I'm just carrying on what I'm doing, teaching and learning continuously. So that's, I think, pretty much things.
Okay, Geshe. So, Geshe, this is our final question. What message do you have to fellow Tibetans worldwide and even the plethora of Tibet supporters? And now I think we can go beyond this, the larger global community for that matter. And also towards particularly the monastic community who are in Tibet and also like us in exile and diaspora.
I don't have any advice to the kind of to saying this, but the important of to preserving our cultures, of course Tibetan languages and then Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan cultures. We tend to learn multiple levels and things like that. So we obviously everyone's trying to best, so we have to do continuously to without losing hopes.
Indeed, Geshe. So on that note, Geshe, thank you so much for joining our session here and sort of illuminating much on this very important subject of how science and Buddhism are sort of working together to bring peace and more understanding and interconnectedness in this beautiful world we live in. And on top of this, I take this opportunity to thank my dear friend Tenzin Gyatso, who sort of connected me with you, Geshe. So thank you so much on behalf of the Foundation for Nonviolent Alternatives.
Thank you so much to giving such opportunity to sharing and the learning few thought with you. That's wonderful. Thank you.
For more updates and videos by FNVA, click on the link and please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.